Live from Studio A, WTLK, The Thunder.
Some sort of, I guess you would call it, test footage was released last week for Matt Reeves' The Batman, finally showing Robert Pattinson in his Batsuit, and of course it's got the same internet reaction. Some liked it, some don't. The bat symbol was interesting though, because it looks like it was just an embedded batarang in there. At least that's what I thought. What did you think? And also later on, a few days after that, there were some actual set photos released of in the daytime, so it's more clear, of Robert Pattinson in the bat suit and on his batcycle. So images are starting to come in now of this new Batman, so it's become even more real. And in the test footage video, it was actually some of the score that's going to be on the Batman soundtrack, and it was pretty nifty, I thought. And also, sadly, the Suicide Squad, James Gunn's Suicide Squad production has just been temporarily put to a halt, so Gunn can go home and say goodbye to his dog who's about to pass on. So our thoughts are definitely with James Gunn and his family on that. And some interesting news on the Marvel front. Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness no longer has Scott Derrickson as its director, and I think was he his writer, I think. But and very interesting name has stepped in on there to start, I think, writing and directing, might be for sure now. Sam Raimi. The Sam Raimi of Evil Dead and the Spider-Man trilogy that we all know and love, minus the third one, is now in this. So it's very appropriate because, Sam Raimi has worked on Marvel films before, not necessarily MCU films, obviously, but Marvel films. And of course, Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness is supposed to be the MCU's first horror movie. That is, if you're not counting New Mutants, which I don't think we should, because I've only been hearing secondhand that they're saying that this is an MCU film, which I don't believe that's the case at all. To think this movie is just going to be like what Dark Phoenix was, is just sort of there, just putting it out into the world to get it off our shelves sort of thing. But I still hope it's going to be much better than Dark Phoenix. Dark Phoenix was so god-awful, I would pretty much wager on New Mutants being a lot better. But you know what? Oh, life will teach me I'm probably wrong. I don't know. But yeah. And also, it's got people speculating of Sam Raimi in the MCU and multiverse. Maybe any more appearances from Tobey Maguire Spider-Man, maybe? I guess we'll see as we get closer to Doctor Strange's May 2021 release date. But of course, with the whole SpiderVerse thing, we're also starting to get some set photos starting to trickle out from Venom 2, seeing Tom Hardy and, of course, Woody Harrelson as Cletus Cassidy, the Carnage, which I don't believe I had ever stated on here, but on NXT TakeOver Portland, Johnny Gargano's wrestling gear, which is without fail Marvel themed for every takeover. This one is Johnny Gargano's face logo in the style of Carnage, so it's all coming together nicely. And on to some podcast news. Not just with our own stuff, but we might be recording tonight as of post date. We shall see. There's still just some little adjustments. I won't get into it. But today is the New Day Feel the Power, which I don't usually broadcast. I told you about it when it came out, but I don't usually be like, oh, hey, and this is going on this episode, and this is going on that episode. But I'm telling you about this episode because this episode is DragonCon themed. Yep. We have, of course, the guys and Xavier Woods' friend Michael Mosley, who is an indie wrestler, and also his friend that goes with him to DragonCon because he too is from the Atlanta area. And of course, Labor Day weekend is also around Xavier Woods' birthday. But yeah, they're going to be sharing stories about their time in a DragonCon. And apparently, you should go ahead and listen to yourself because I'm iffy at recounting stories like this. But they talk about things from how they initially didn't do cosplay for DragonCon, and however they did decide to because they saw everybody's awesome superhero and anime cosplays, and they were just like, okay, we got to get in on this. And so they went to the Walk of Fame as a Planeteers one year, and Lou Ferrigno was in the table next to the table that they were in line for, and he actually gave Woods props and said, hey, that's nice body. And, that man knows bodies, so give it up for the Hulk now. But then, of course, when Woods went up to him later to get an autograph, because Lou Ferrigno does have a thing of, if you catch up to me, I'll give you an autograph, no problem. And Ferrigno was already surrounded by people already, and Xavier Woods came up, and Ferrigno was just like, not now, kid. Damn. I'm not done listening to the episode yet, but that's just one of, I'm sure, many great stories coming up this episode. But of course, it just brings me into the raggarts of last year when myself and Matt were going around trying to look for a restaurant to eat at. And of course, Xavier, who was dressed as Billy Kay of the Iconics, and Michael was dressed as Peyton Royce. They and their group, including somebody who had the OG Kane mask on, they came out of Tin Lizzy's when we were just waiting there because it was between Tin Lizzy's and Hard Rock Cafe or Hard Rock Restaurant, whatever they're calling it nowadays. I think it's still cafe. Yeah, it's got to be cafe. But yeah, they came out and I saw their friend in the Kane mask first, and I was just like, oh, word. And then Matt was just like, no, look, it's Xavier Woods. And I thought he was just fucking with me. And then I looked dead ass right at Xavier Billy Kay Woods. And I was just like, oh, shit, what the fuck do I say? Because they're looking for a dinner spot just like we are. And, this is just probably not a good time to enter our business. It probably would have been a good time, honestly. Would seem like he'd be nice enough to at least say, hey, what's up? Handshake, whatever. But, there's always this year. Gonna do it. Also, so enough about that. Another podcast is AEW Unrestricted, which is the official podcast for All Elite Wrestling for those of you who are just, too good for WWE now. And it's hosted by Aubrey Edwards and Tony Schiavone. And their first guest was Jon Moxley. Of course, Jon Moxley, we know, formerly Dean Ambrose of The Shield. And I know it's been quite a few weeks because of just some unorganization here, but, I just kind of blew off AEW because this podcast is fucking long enough already. So let me just give you the rundown, and maybe I'll start picking up AEW again as long as I continue to think to put it in my notes here. Because now I'm doing my notepad thing instead of just reading directly off websites, because I want this thing to be organized and awesome. So, okay. This coming Saturday on the 28th is the pay-per-view Revolution for AEW. And Moxley is facing Chris Jericho for the AEW Championship. Kenny Omega and Hangman Page became tag team champions a few weeks ago, and they'll face the Young Bucks at Revolution, which is an interesting storyline because they're all part of, quote-unquote, the Elite group with Cody Rhodes. And Nyla Rose became women's champion by defeating Riott, who's the first ever AEW women's champion, who became AEW women's champion by defeating Nyla Rose. Oh, apparently Britt Baker, the dentist, is now a heel, and she has an interesting gimmick friendship thing going on with Tony Schiavone, where she is like his friend, but she's also like kind of humiliating him and calling him Mr. Starbucks and all that. It's an interesting take, but now we've got the heel couple now of Britt Baker and Adam Cole across both companies. And then we have Cody versus MJF, and he had to go through several sort of stipulations or sort of conditions before he could get this match. The first one was he was not allowed to attack MJF at all before Revolution, otherwise the match would definitely be off. He had to take 10 lashes from a belt across his bare back from MJF, which, yeah, that was painful to watch. And he had to face Wardlow, his bodyguard, in the first ever AEW Steel Cage match, which took place this past Wednesday at State Farm Arena in downtown Atlanta. And it was the first AEW show in Atlanta, which, of course, Cody's from Atlanta, and also, AEW Dynamite takes place on TNT, which is in Atlanta, which was also the host channel for WCW. So, it's kind of like a premiere, but also sort of homecoming of sorts. I don't know, but it was a really cool show. And of course, it was funny because John Moxley, after he won his match that night in State Farm Arena, he got jumped by the entire inner circle, and then he was saved by Dustin Rhodes, Dustin Rhodes, and then Darby Allin came to his aid right afterwards, which was just very much reminiscent of Rawlanta last year when Dean Ambrose got jumped by Drew McIntyre, Bobby Lashley, Baron Corbin, and Elias, and then Seth Rollins came out with a steel chair. This is when, the kayfabe relationship between Seth and Dean was super rocky because of that whole betrayal that happened the previous October. And then Roman Reigns came out for his first sort of unofficial action as he officially announced his return earlier that evening. And then they came over there and they fought off that particular inner circle. And that's what pretty much kicked off the Shield storyline that wrapped up at technically officially Fastlane, and technically in the house show, the Shield's Last Stand. You know what it is. But yeah, I just thought it was very funny that that's exactly how it went for John Moxley in his first trip back to State Farm Arena since Rawlanta. Oh, and hey, speaking of all that, apparently Facebook reminded me that today, this time last year, was the SmackDown house show that took place at Bon Secours Wellness Arena here in Greenville, which means, of course, tomorrow is the 1-year anniversary of Rawlanta. So, yeah. One more month, and then we're getting the sequel on March 30th. Ooh, which means, yeah, I guess with SC Comic Con being the 2 days before it, I guess I'll just either record and put out the WTLK on Sunday night, or see if, while Dan and I are walking around with the Zoom, I can just go ahead and record my WTLK live from SC Comic Con. Honestly, it's probably going to lean towards that second option because it sounds way too delicious of an opportunity for me to pass up. All right, so with all that, let's get a move on to some news. NXT UK Takeover will be taking place in Dublin. Its first one in Ireland, and that'll be taking place on April 26th. The Women's Elimination Chamber match, which that pay-per-view is on March 8th, if you didn't remember, will be to face Becky for the Raw Women's Championship at WrestleMania. It'd be Asuka, Natalya, Liv Morgan, Ruby Riott, Sarah Logan. So Riott Squad reunion. Shayna, Fruit Punch Mouth Baszler, and yeah, Shayna's almost certainly going to win, but it's going to be fun to see the Riott Squad back together again, even though it'll probably be Sarah and Liv versus Ruby, because it sounds like Ruby turned on Sarah too. And then the okay, I'm not even going to pronounce that. Trophy gauntlet match, because of course they have to have a sort of best in the world trophy match every time they go to Saudi Arabia, will be between Andrade, Bobby Lashley, Eric Rowan, AJ Styles, R-Truth, and Rusev. Sounds pretty cool. So anyway, last week on Raw, the doctors wouldn't clear Matt Hardy for the no-holds-barred match that he was scheduled to have versus Randy Orton, but Matt came out anyway in the neck brace to ask what he did to Edge. And Randy apologized, and Hardy was still just like, no, I still want to fight. I don't give a shit if I've got this neck brace on. Just, ugh. And then he got RKO'd and then concertoed the regular way on the mat, and then again with his head against the steel steps. And this whole segment took like 20 damn minutes, and it was just like, okay, I mean, Randy Orton's heat is already up. Do we need this to be like 25 minutes long? I don't know. And then Becky called out Shayna and said she'll be rooting for her in the Elimination Chamber match because I guess, Becky doesn't appreciate being vampired like that. Go figure. And then Drew McIntyre squashed MVP after a back and forth with Paul Heyman because MVP was still pissed that Drew didn't want him as his business manager. Angel Garza and Bobby Lashley defeated Rusev and Humberto Carrillo when Angel Garza did a surprise roll-up on Rusev. And what's interesting about this was Zelina Vega and Lana were ringside because, of course, Zelina is with Angel, his manager, till Andrade comes back at least. And then, of course, Lana's with Lashley. But there was no sign of Liv, but the preview that I read online had mentioned Liv, but that Liv might be lurking around or whatever, but all she did on Raw was just, she had a little backstage interview talking about facing Ruby in the Elimination Chamber, so I don't know. And then the Monday Night Messiah, Seth Rollins, came out with Buddy Murphy and the AOP. And then they were interrupted by the Viking Raiders, and then Seth was stunned by KO. And then in the main event was a 6-man tag match of KO and the Viking Raiders versus Murphy and the Street Profits. And then it ended in a no contest, of course, because Seth was just like, yeah, no, I'm going to intervene. This is all done. And then they were ganging up on them, and KO was about to get the stomp when the Street Profits came to the rescue. And so it'll be Seth Rollins and Buddy Murphy versus the Street Profits for the Raw Tag Team Championship at Super Showdown this Thursday. Then on NXT, Jordan Devlin defeated Leah Rush to retain the NXT Cruiserweight Championship. And it was announced that Tegan Nox versus Dakota Kai will be a steel cage match in 2 weeks. Or from today, it'll be a week and a half. And then Tommaso Ciampa came out and addressed the NXT universe and gave an ominous warning to Johnny Gargano after he betrayed him at TakeOver Portland and cost him Goldie. And then the Grizzled Young Veterans defeated the interesting tag team of Raul Mendoza and Joaquin Wilde and announced they're officially here in NXT America. And I only say interesting if you've also been watching 205 Live as well, because they just started sort of having a rivalry. I mean, they faced each other twice, and I think they're split now. But yeah, it's just a pretty cool tag team stuff that, yeah, actually makes sense. But it was one of those where you're just like, okay, I don't know who this match is trying to serve, who they're about to create a storyline for. Apparently, it's for Grizzled Young Veterans, so they can announce they're here in NXT America. Then Keith Lee defeated Kona Reeves. Then Dominik Dijakovic came out and said he can't just let it go because TakeOver Portland was supposed to be their final chapter, but he just, like, it's just still in his head. And Keith Lee was just like, look, man, I understand. And, the NXT universe that night, they were chanting fight forever. So, I mean, we can do that for them. If you convince William Regal to make it, then to make that match, then we can do it. So, more Keith Lee and Dominik Dijakovic on the way. And then Chelsea Green defeated Kaden Carter as revenge for Carter spoiling her debut with the Robert Stone brand. And then in the middle of the match, and I swear, I'm actually starting to warm up to Bianca Belair. Like, I respect her as a competitor and athlete, and as a person, IRL. But the character was just like to me. But now she's just hilarious to me. Like, I'm actually very warm on her. And she actually just came out and was just she called out Charlotte Flair in the middle of that match, and Kaden and Chelsea were just like, "What the fuck is this shit?" And she was just like, "Okay, I say you didn't go here, but now after disrespecting me, I want you to go here." And so it was announced a couple days later that Belair will face Charlotte Flair this Wednesday on NXT. And then the main event, Velveteen Dream defeated Roderick Strong, and this one was interesting in the fact that, of course, Velveteen was out for the last couple months with injury because the Undisputed Era ganged up on him, and then he came out and he had this mural of Velveteen with Roderick's wife, Marina Shafir, and their son on his gear, which, of course, was pissed off Roderick Strong, and he gave like heartfelt, that's wrong, I'm gonna kick your ass and all that. So I don't know who's supposed to be the good guy and who's supposed to be the bad guy in here, because Undisputed are famously the bad guys, but usually when a guy uses a man's family to taunt him, usually that makes him the bad guy. So I mean, of course, I'm on Velveteen's side here, but I don't know if they're supposed to be a good guy or a bad guy in this. I'm just saying. So on Friday night, we started out with the mishmash of storylines as the Usos and the New Day defeated Miz and Morrison and Dolph Ziggler and Robert Roode. And then Braun Strowman and Elias defeated Shinsuke Nakamura and Cesaro in a Symphony of Destruction match. And what that is they actually have IRL instruments lying around the arena that they can use to smash the other competitors with. Like, they have a viola, they have an electric guitar, they have an acoustic guitar, they have a piano, like I believe they have like other drums, like they have legit musical instruments here, and they're just smashing. Like, Sami Zayn brought like a ukulele, and of course Elias has his own acoustic guitar. Yeah, it was crazy. And then apparently Shinsuke got injured in it because they keep showing his stitches and him getting carted out. So I guess I don't know if this is real or if they're just writing him off TV for a while so he can go on a break. I don't know, but it looks like Shinsuke is going to be all right either way. He's just going to be resting for a little bit. And then on this episode of A Moment of Bliss, or this segment of A Moment of Bliss, Alexa had on Nikki and Brie Bella, who are both pregnant. Of course they are. And yeah, it was announced that they'll be inducted into the WWE Hall of Fame this April on WrestleMania weekend with the NWO and Batista, so congratulations to them. Then Naomi defeated Carmella and has earned the opportunity to face Bayley for the SmackDown Women's Championship at Super Showdown. It'll be the first time the Women's Championship will be defended in Saudi Arabia, so just breaking some more barriers here. And then in the main event, Goldberg came out to address the WWE Universe, and he was interrupted by The Fiend. So Goldberg speared him, The Fiend got right back up, and then he disappeared. So, yep, this Thursday at noon Eastern will be Super Showdown. So, of course, next Monday on WTLK, we'll be covering all the action. And also, little side note, this past Saturday, Tyson Fury, the one who defeated Braun Strowman at Crown Jewel, or was it Super Showdown? It's one of the shows last year. He had his second bout with Deontay Wilder and defeated him, so Tyson Fury is still undefeated because he's going to knock you out. So this has been WTLK The Thunder. Drink, fight, and make your ancestors proud.